It's 1946. World War II has just ended. The world is exhausted. Cities are rubble. Nations are rebuilding. And suddenly, the United States launches one of the largest naval expeditions in history, not to Europe, not to Japan, but to the frozen edge of the world, Antarctica. Why would a war weary nation send thousands of military personnel, warships, submarines, and aircraft to the most hostile continent on Earth? Just months after peace, this was real. It was called Operation Highjump, and for decades, it became fuel for some of the wildest theories ever told. But what actually happened? Let's go back. The mission that didn't make sense. In August 1946, under the command of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the U.S. Navy assembled an enormous task force. This was not a small research trip. We're talking 13 ships, 33 aircraft, over 4,700 military personnel, an aircraft carrier, destroyers, submarines. For comparison, this was larger than many wartime combat fleets. The official explanation? To train personnel and test equipment in extreme cold conditions. To map Antarctica. To establish a research base. The operation began in December 1946 and targeted a region known as Little America 4, built on the Ross Ice Shelf. The name sounds peaceful, but the scale felt military, and that's where the mystery began. Why Antarctica? During World War II, Germany had shown interest in Antarctica, particularly in an area called Neuschwabenland, claimed during a 1938 to 1939 expedition. Rumors spread after the war that high-ranking Nazis may have escaped Europe and established secret bases beneath the Antarctic ice. There is no solid evidence of this, but in 1946, with tensions rising between the US and the Soviet Union, Antarctica suddenly had strategic importance. Potential future military bases, air routes across the South Pole, territorial claims, cold weather warfare training. Remember, the Cold War was beginning. The Arctic and Antarctic were becoming strategic frontiers. The fleet arrives. When Operation Highjump reached Antarctica, the environment immediately proved brutal. Blizzards, whiteouts, sub-zero temperatures, unpredictable ice movements, planes struggled to take off, equipment froze, men battled frostbite. But despite the harsh conditions, the operation achieved significant milestones. Over 70,000 aerial photographs taken. Large portions of the coastline, mapped scientific data collected. Cold weather military testing conducted. However, something unexpected happened. The mission ended early. The early withdrawal Operation Highjump was planned to last about 6 to 8 months. Instead, it concluded after roughly 2 months of Antarctic operations. Why? Officially, worsening weather conditions and the need to avoid further casualties. One ship, the USS Mount Olympus, suffered damage. Several aircraft were lost due to crashes. 3 men died in a plane accident. That alone, while tragic, wasn't extraordinary for polar expeditions. But the early withdrawal sparked speculation. Why leave so soon with such a massive force? Was it really just the weather? Or something else? The Byrd interview that fueled conspiracies. After returning to the United States, Admiral Byrd gave an interview in 1947 to a Chilean newspaper. In it, he mentioned the possibility that future wars could involve aircraft flying from one pole to the other at incredible speeds. He spoke about the strategic importance of the polar regions. To some, this sounded like a warning. Over time, his comments were twisted into something more dramatic. Claims that Byrd encountered advanced aircraft, secret bases, even unknown civilizations. But here's the reality. There is no credible historical evidence that Operation Highjump encountered enemy forces, UFOs, or hidden Nazi technology. The official records, logs, and after-action reports point to something far more grounded. Cold weather, military preparedness. The real reason behind the mission. To understand Operation Highjump, you have to understand the mindset of 1946. The atomic bomb had just changed warfare forever. Long-range aircraft and ballistic missile concepts were emerging. If another global war broke out, especially with the Soviet Union, polar routes would be the shortest path between superpowers. The U.S. Navy needed to know, could ships operate in extreme ice conditions? Could aircraft function reliably in polar environments? Could bases be established in frozen terrain? How would men survive extended deployments in such climates? Antarctica was the perfect testing ground. Operation Highjump wasn't about chasing ghosts. It was about preparing for a future that felt uncertain and dangerous. The science that changed everything. While the mission had military objectives, its scientific contributions were massive. The expedition improved mapping of Antarctica more than any previous effort. It paved the way for future international cooperation. In fact, less than a decade later, Antarctica became the focus of global scientific collaboration during the International Geophysical Year. This eventually led to the Antarctic Treaty, which designated Antarctica as a peaceful scientific preserve, banning military activity and nuclear testing. In a strange way, Operation Highjump helped push the world toward cooperation instead of conflict in Antarctica. Why people think it was erased. So if Operation Highjump was real, documented, and publicly acknowledged, why do so many people think it was erased? 3 reasons. 1. Sheer scale. Few people realize the U.S. sent thousands of troops to Antarctica in 1946. 2. Cold War secrecy culture. The late 1940s and 1950s were filled with classified programs. People assume this was one of them. 3. Internet myth amplification. In the 1990s and 2000s, fringe theories connected high jump to secret Nazi UFO bases, hollow Earth legends, and alien encounters. The real story, military logistics and polar mapping, just isn't as dramatic. So, the myth became louder than the truth. The human side of the expedition. Lost in all the conspiracy noise are the real men who endured Antarctica's brutality. Sailors navigating ice-choked waters. Pilots flying reconnaissance missions over endless white terrain. Engineers fighting frozen machinery. Medical teams treating frostbite and hypothermia. This wasn't a Hollywood sci-fi encounter. It was grit, discipline, and survival against nature itself. And nature nearly always wins. A forgotten chapter of power politics. Operation Highjump represents something bigger than mystery. It shows how quickly the world shifted from World War II into Cold War tension. Peace had barely begun, yet superpowers were already positioning themselves for the next potential conflict. Antarctica wasn't just ice. It was strategic space, air routes, territorial influence, technological testing. In 1946, it symbolized the future battlefield no one wanted to admit might come. The truth versus the legend. So did the United States uncover a secret Nazi fortress under the ice? No credible evidence says so. Did they encounter advanced unknown technology? No documented proof. Was the expedition real, massive, and strategically significant? Absolutely. Operation Highjump wasn't erased. It was simply overshadowed by bigger global headlines. Nuclear weapons, the Berlin crisis, the rise of the Cold War. But when you look closer, it becomes one of the most fascinating transitions from World War to geopolitical chessboard. And here's the most chilling part. In 1946, the United States treated Antarctica as a potential military frontier. Today, it is protected by international treaty. But global tensions are rising again. And Antarctica still holds enormous strategic value. Rare minerals, freshwater reserves, geographic positioning. History has a strange way of circling back. Maybe the real mystery isn't what happened in 1946. Maybe it's what could happen next. Because sometimes the scariest secrets aren't hidden under ice. They're hidden in plain sight.